Welcome to MacStories Unwind, a weekly review of everything MacStories and more. Today's show is brought to you by Genius Scan. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is MacStories Editor-in-Chief, Federico Viticci. Happy Friday, Federico.
Hello, John. Happy Friday. For a second, I thought you were saying, and with me is MacStories. I'm sure that could work. But
Mr. MacStories himself, Federico Viticci.
That could work.
You know, they just put that on your mailbox, Mr. MacStories. Then all of those, review units will actually make it to your apartment.
All those packages will arrive on time.
All right, Federico, what am I doing? I'm losing my mind because It's almost WWDC. And we're getting ready for that, and I'm excited. How about you?
Me too. It's starting to feel real,
Good, because you only have a couple of days more to make it feel real.
I know, but I've been very busy, and
I know
also
you have
dealing with the fact that there's the dealing with vaccinations and all that sort of stuff. Like, there's been stuff on my mind, but
right,
we were planning our coverage for next week, and that's when it started to feel real. Like, oh, so John is gonna take care of macOS, and there's iPadOS. So yeah, now that we have writing assignments in place, it feels very real. And it's exciting because, like, last year, sure, it was exciting that it was a new format, but I think a lot of us were, a little bummed out that we were not going to be able to attend. And I'm not going to say that I'm not bummed out this year as well, but I've sort of made peace with it. So now I'm just excited, I think.
Well, and it does allow us to do more. And I should preview what we're doing a little bit, which is, of course, we're going to have lots of stories on the site covering all the details, from overviews about the new OSs to all the nitpicky little details that we discover throughout the week. So you can expect a lot of that. Plus, we're doing bonus episodes of App Stories. App Stories is not coming out on Monday as usual this week, because what we're going to do is we're going to record after the keynote, and then we will release that on Tuesday early, probably in the morning. And then we'll do a daily episode Tuesday through Friday. And then this show, Unwind, will be published on Saturday instead of Friday, just to kind of recap everything. And I expect we'll do another WWDC-related App Stories episode again on the 14th of June. So that's kind of the schedule, and it should be a lot of fun.
And then who knows what's going to happen this summer, right? We have so many things to do at MacStories, some of which we've been keeping a secret for the past 6 months, plus even more, maybe.
Right.
And so there's that happening at some point this summer, pretty soon, I hope. But then obviously, we're going to start writing about all the new OSs, and I'm going to start working on my review. And I can tell you, John, I need to figure out a way I don't want this review to destroy my life this summer. Also because
I don't want it to either.
I want to find a good compromise in terms of, this summer, I want to write other stuff as well. I don't want to disappear and resurface, surface again in September and be like, hey, here I am. I spent the past 3 months in hiding. I don't want to do that anymore. I cannot do that anymore because of the things that we are going to announce. So I need to strike a good balance in terms of, yes, I have the review, but also I have other responsibilities, which is why I've been trying as much as possible to set up a really good system for taking notes in an efficient way, organizing my research properly, because I found in previous years that a lot of time was just spent, organizing notes and finding previous screenshots. I want to make sure that I can save all kinds of details as quickly as possible and find everything later and just get done with writing. I feel more optimistic this year compared to last year, because I feel like my mind is in a better place. I feel more focused. I feel more energized. But then obviously, when you're staring at a blank page, and that's really when you gotta get the work done. So we'll see.
When the energy drains out of you and the dread starts seeping in.
Yeah. But I don't know. I have a good feeling, but that's the overall plan. Yeah.
I think it'll be fine. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. We're all going to have to budget our time really well. We've got the summer series coming up throughout the summer, as well as all the extra stuff that we're doing. So stay tuned for all of that, I suppose. But we'll kick it off next week with a bunch of articles and episodes of App Stories. Why don't we recap the week, Federico? And I'm going to start with a couple of reviews that I did this week. And the first one is Timery for Toggle, which is Joe Verbar's app that tracks time. And this is an app that, I mean, I feel like we've been using this app absolutely forever because Joe had this in beta for a very long time before 1.0 came out. I think we used it for at least 6 months in advance of that. And the app has just done, it's really evolved quite a bit in the time since it came out. I think it came out originally in 2019 around the time of WWDC. So it's been a couple of years. And this week, Timery added a Mac app, which made me very happy, I got to say, because having a thing like a time tracker on all platforms is super important. And because I like Timery so much, I made the exception to my usual rule, which is this sort of app needs to be on every platform. And I use Timery on my iPhone and iPad, and I was using a different app on my Mac, but now I've unified that and I'm using it in all places. And what makes Timery so good on the Mac is that Joe spent a lot of time thinking about how to input the tasks into the app, because it's a little different, obviously, when you're on a Mac. You're not poking at a screen ever. All you've got is you've got pointing devices and you've got the keyboard. And he did a fantastic job coming up with ways, especially from the keyboard, to access the input and stopping of timers. So there's tons of keyboard shortcuts, a lot of settings and things that you can really tailor to work the way you like to start and stop timers. And I was a little concerned at the beginning, thinking that this app might not fit super well with the Mac, but it turns out those were all unfounded because it fits fantastically with the Mac, and it's one of the better examples of a Mac Catalyst app that I've seen.
Yeah, I'm using it right now. It's very nice that as soon as I logged in, it pulled in all my existing details and all my all my workspace is here, my saved timers. It's really well done. This is the kind of Catalyst app that begs for a shortcuts app for the Mac, because I would love if I could use my Timery shortcuts, of which I have many on the iPhone and iPad, on the Mac Mini as well. Those presets that I have for saved timers, for example, for starting a timer when I'm sitting down to record a show. I really hope that the shortcuts is coming to the Mac next week, so that all these apps that have done the work already, like Timery, can take advantage of that on macOS too.
Right. And it's worth noting, too, that the work that Joe put in to make this a Mac app actually benefited the iPad app, too, because those same keyboard shortcuts are available on the iPad. And it's now a 3-column, or at least it's got a sidebar, which is something it didn't have before because it was a tab bar app. So it's looking better on the iPad as well. All right, the second review, Federico, is HomeRun 2 from Aaron Pierce. And this, to me, is one of the essential HomeKit automation apps on iOS. And HomeRun's an app that I've used for a long time. What it does is it allows you to tie scenes to button configurations in the app and on the Apple Watch. Now, what HomeRun 2 did that's a little different is that it brought widgets. And the widgets do the same kind of thing that Sur does, which is, a music player where it kind of fakes interactivity by having a play button that briefly opens the app, starts playback, and then sends you back to the home screen. HomeRun does the exact same thing. So you can have a shortcut with multiple buttons for starting your scenes in HomeKit. And when you tap them, you'll see the app kind of flash very briefly, and then you're back at the home screen, and it works really well. I've really appreciated having that, because I've got a few scenes that I use all the time, like shutting off the lights in my studio or turning on the lamp by my bedside table so that I can read at night, that kind of thing. And aside from widgets, there's also a new grid system inside the app, so you can set up grids and you can assign them to separate pages. So maybe you want to have a page for your house, and then you want to have another page for like a vacation home, or maybe you just want to set them up by rooms. Maybe you want one for your kitchen and one for your bedroom. It's really flexible. You can really set up these pages any way you want, and then create a grid of buttons to trigger scenes, and they're very customizable with icons, colors, and that sort of thing. So it's a fantastic update, and I guess I should mention too that the Apple Watch, the complication editor has also been updated, so it's got a new look. Works basically the same way, but it's a little easier to use in terms of the design.
Nice, very nice. I gotta check it out. I spent some time over the weekend setting up some grids and widgets for HomeRun on my iPhone. So John, Apple did something different this year. Ahead of WWDC, they have announced the finalists of the upcoming Apple Design Awards that will be announced during the week of WWDC. But now we have a list of categories and a list of finalists for each category. Now, I don't want to go over all the names that Apple shared, but I can tell you the categories.
Yeah, it's 36 names.
Yeah, the categories include inclusivity, delight and fun, interaction, social impact, visuals and graphics, and innovation. Now,
right,
a lot of these apps we have mentioned on MacStories or covered on MacStories or MacStories Weekly or our podcasts at some point in the past. There's a few apps that, of course, are just a little beyond the scope of MacStories and the sort of software that we review and that we recommend. But those are great apps and games nonetheless. So go check out the full list. I just want to have a quick shout out to some of my personal favorites. 1Password, Puck Playroom, which you recently reviewed, John.
Right.
There's a few Apple Arcade games like South of the Circle and Wonderbox. There's Carrot Weather, obviously a MacStories favorite. There's Craft, which is our, one of the best note-taking apps on Apple platforms at the moment. There's Nova, which is the Panic code editor that we reviewed a while back. And this is the only app that is not from the App Store, because Nova is only available through the Panic web store. It's not available on the Mac App Store at all. So go check out the list. I think it's really cool that Apple is sharing the list of finalists because it creates hype, basically, and it creates speculation. Like, it gets people talking who's going to win in this category. And it recognizes that even though there's only going to be one winner per category, there's some really excellent choices when it comes to this list of finalists that each of these apps and games could very well deserve the award. But unfortunately, only one is going to win in each category. So we'll see. But I think it's a cool idea, and I hope Apple does it again in the following years as well.
Yeah, I really like the re-emphasis on the ADAs because there's going to be a broadcast event on Thursday next week, and having these finalists, I mean, it's a big honor just to be a finalist because of all the millions of apps that are available. These are the 36 that are under consideration, so that's a big win for all these developers too. All right, Federico, this week we also found out about the winners of the WWDC Swift Student Challenge. And so Apple named 350 students from 35 countries and regions around the world who are Apple student scholars. And those scholars received a swag package with a hoodie and a hat and some pins. And I think they also get a 1-year subscription to the Apple Developer Program. So unfortunately, in years past, you used to get a ticket to WWDC 2, but because this is online only, that obviously is not a thing this year. I wrote about this, and then 2 days later, I found out that my son, Finn, was one of the winners. So that was kind of nice. His girlfriend, Ellie, too. So the two of them were secretly submitting their entries. I knew nothing about it until the FedEx guy knocked on my door and said, here's a package for you that I wasn't expecting. And I opened it up, and it said WWDC on it. So that was kind of fun. We should also mention Vidit Bhargava's design concept for the iPad, Federico. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what Vidit had here?
So it's funny because a few weeks ago on Connected, my other show on Relay FM, I mentioned if I could get one wish for iPadOS granted at WWDC, that would have been, much to the surprise of my co-hosts, a menu bar on the iPad. And I mentioned that because I remember an old concept that Vidit did a few years ago. And I don't know if maybe the episode inspired Vidit to revisit the concept, but still now Vidit has done an even better visualization of what a menu bar and an improved multitasking workflow could look like on iPadOS. I really love the idea of a menu bar that collects some sort of global app-related menus and that also serves as the active app indicator in split view. The idea being that if you have two apps up on screen at the same time, the one you see in the menu bar with the name of the app, that's the active one. And that fixes one of the many design issues with the current implementation of split view in iPadOS 14. But there's a lot of other nice ideas in this concept that I think Apple should take a look at, from being able to tie shortcuts to a specific application, for example. So to have a app-based shortcuts menu, or the fact that you could discover all sorts of actions supported via either touch or keyboard shortcuts from a global, menu bar system, which I think is a really clever idea. And also Vidit has some ideas for what an app library could look like on iPad as a sort of special area of the dock, which I believe is also something that Jason Snell mentioned on Upgrade a few episodes ago. I am intrigued by that possibility that Apple is going to bring the app library to iPad, but it's not going to be like a page of the home screen. It could be like, remember stacks in the macOS dock? Can you still do a stack that, like that special icon that when you click it, it shows you like a bunch of stuff?
Yeah, you absolutely can. Yeah.
Yeah, so something like that, basically. Vidit imagines like the app library as this special pop-up that appears from the dock and shows you all of your different app categories. So I don't know. I think a menu bar is potentially the way to go, because I do believe that the status bar right now on iPad is useless, especially in landscape. Like you have this very long and thin area that is essentially used for nothing. You have the date and time on the left and a bunch of indicators on the right and nothing in the middle. So maybe it's time to use that space somehow.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a great concept. And I really like the simplicity of things like the app library idea, because that seems like something that is both intuitive and hopefully simple to implement. All right. We had a couple of link posts this week, too, that I should mention. One was a story by Matthew Panzarino over at TechCrunch, who highlighted an email that came out during the Apple versus Epic, or actually the other way around, Epic versus Apple lawsuit.
Wait, that matters? The order in the name matters?
It does. That's a thing, yes. Yeah, because Epic's the one who did the suing, not and
Apple. What's it called? The plaintiff? Who's the plaintiff?
The plaintiff is Epic, and the defendant is Apple. But this one's a little more complicated because Apple actually countersued for violations of the app developer contract. So it was actually also Apple versus Epic. But
now you're just showing off. Okay, look.
Epic sued first, so they get to have the first spot going for it. All right. There's more to it than even that, but yes, that's how it works, Federico. But now that you've completely derailed me from Matthew Panzarino's article, he wrote about this email that was an exchange between Bertrand Serlet, Scott Forstall, and Steve Jobs about their decision to create the App Store and allow third-party apps onto the iPhone. And it's interesting, as he points out, it's an interesting email because not only is it of historical significance, because it shows that the decision to have an app store came a lot earlier than I think a lot of people assumed, but it also shows a very efficient style of leadership and management of the company. And I think Matthew Panzarino does a great job here, just kind of laying out why that matters, especially in those days for Apple. And he doesn't really speculate whether that sort of efficiency exists today, but I think it does capture a couple of interesting aspects of the company back in 2007. So make sure you check out his full story on TechCrunch. And then CNET found out from Apple this week, which was kind of interesting to me, just kind of as a very meta thing that Apple talked to CNET and nobody else about this, as far as I could tell. But AirTags are being updated because there was some commentary around whether the privacy protections that are built into AirTags were enough to avoid people using them for things like stalking. And for instance, one of the things when they shipped, if you have an AirTag that's separated from the owner, after 3 days, it beeps so that whoever's around it knows that it exists. That's been changed to between 8 and 24 hours. So a lot smaller time frame there. Plus, Apple's going to work later in the year on an Android app so that Android users can detect the presence of AirTags too, because one thing that I don't think the AirTags really addressed initially was what if you have an Apple user who wants to stalk an Android user? And so that should be fixed later this year, but they didn't really provide much in the way of details in terms of what the software would be like or when it was coming, other than later in the year. So those are both positive changes that are coming down the road. All right, Federico, let's talk about Club Mac Stories this week. I should mention, even though it came out on Monday and not alongside MacStories Weekly, that we recorded and published an episode of MacStories Unplugged, where I gave some follow-up about the cul-de-sac. We have an ongoing discussion about the intricacies of the American suburbs and the cul-de-sac that I live on. So we had some cul-de-sac action here on the block recently, so I updated everybody on that. And then it was really true suburban cul-de-sac action. I'm telling you, Federico, it was like a rave on the block, basically.
Sure.
Then you don't believe me, and you shouldn't. You really shouldn't. I'm lying. Then we also went behind the scenes and talked a lot about your visit to the new Apple store in Rome, which is unbelievably beautiful. You wrote a nice story about it, and Sylvia took the pictures for the article, and we talked about how that all came about and what the two of you did when you visited. Federico, tell us a little bit about Weekly.
In MacStories Weekly this week, we did something fun where you picked a bunch of apps for reading. So I guess this is going to be useful to folks who want to relax this summer with some different reading material, as well as folks who want to catch up on their RSS feeds and read later content using some different options for iPhone and iPad. So more specifically, you had a collection of iOS apps for readers. And this is not like your usual collection of like Kindle, Apple Books, and apps for saving articles. There's a wide variety of different takes on reading, which is fun, including manga. And I don't want to say anything more. And you also explained why ReadKit, which has been available on the Mac for quite a while now. I believe I first reviewed ReadKit in 2013. Now has a new version available on the iPhone and iPad, and you explained why it is one of the, if not the best, implementation of a native multi-column layout on iPad, with some excellent use of the multiple columns, keyboard shortcuts, full screen views. So definitely go check that out, because I think, John, you did a good job in explaining why, for someone like you who has tons of RSS feeds coming in on a daily basis, why this sort of app can be useful. We also had how many? 20? 19 app debuts.
It was a lot. Yeah.
There were a lot of new apps and a lot of app updates just before WWDC, which isn't surprising. I actually want to go back and check in previous years of MacStories Weekly. I do believe this is a trend. The developers, they want to make sure that they launch their updates and new apps just before WWDC, because then launching later, your work is going to feel instantly obsolete, because everybody's going to be talking about the next version of iOS and iPadOS. You also had a really good tip on how to deal with home hubs in your HomeKit network. This is the kind of problem that I myself had a few days ago. And lastly, we're giving away some copies of Timery, which we mentioned just a few minutes ago, and it's now available on the Mac as well.
Right. All right, Federico. On App Stories this week, we rounded out our wish list episodes with a special episode for watchOS 8 and tvOS 15. I got to say, we didn't have a lot on tvOS, but fortunately, we had a special guest for episode 221, who was Alex Guillot, our colleague here at MacStories, who does our watchOS review every single year. So Alex had some terrific ideas for things he'd like to see in watchOS 8. And Federico and I pitched in a few of our own as well. So good episode. We're done with the wishes. It's time to see what Apple delivers next week. This episode of MacStories Unwind is brought to you by Genius Scan. Genius Scan makes scanning and managing documents with the iPhone and iPad simple, fast, and efficient by working the way you do, with a flexible set of powerful modern tools that are always with you. The app's scanning engine is super fast and accurate, delivering crisp, clear scans on the go using your device's camera or by picking images from the app's system file picker, your photo library, or as part of the app's custom shortcuts actions. Genius Scan works with a wide range of documents, from things like receipts or pages in books. The app has advanced edge detection that quickly recognizes the page from its background, automatically cropping it and gathering multiple scans into a single PDF for sharing or archiving. Rescanning is really easy too. If you get a page that you don't like, there's no need to rescan the entire document because Genius Scan has a system and a great workflow for replacing individual pages with just a few taps. Also, Genius Scan features accurate optical character recognition, enabling full text searching of your scans and the ability to copy the text for use elsewhere. It's used by everyone from students to doctors and pilots. Genius Scan offers pricing that fits all kinds of uses too, which you can learn more about at thegrizzlylabs.com/genius-scan. Again, that's thegrizzlylabs.com/genius-scan. I'll put a link to the app in the show notes too. So, download Genius Scan today and put the App Store's best scanner in your pocket. Our thanks to Genius Scan for their support of the show. Okay, Federico, do you have something for me for your Unwind pick this week?
I do. It's an album from last year that I've been listening to a lot lately. So this is the sixth studio album by an English rock band. The band's name is Enter Shikari.
I do not know this group.
Okay, so the album is called Nothing is True and Everything is Possible. So Enter Shikari is I would say it's an acquired taste. It's a very particular band. So at a high level, you could say it's an alternative rock band, but it's also very electronic. I guess some folks could say, what's the name? Electronic-core music genre. So they are, I would describe them as like a mix of alt rock, metalcore, and electronic rock. It's a very peculiar sound. And I love it. It's very energetic. It's very unique. It's very Enter Shikari. I've known Enter Shikari since the first record. I believe in 2007. I was just out of high school. I haven't really kept up with them. And then a few weeks ago, Spotify recommended the studio album that came out last year. They recently did an acoustic version of the album as well, which is also very good. But this record, Nothing is True and Everything is Possible, I don't know how to describe it. It sounds like Enter Shikari. It doesn't really sound like anything else. So if you are, it's not a quiet album, that's for sure. I recommend listening to this one loud with a HomePod stereo pair, if you have one of those around maybe. And check out, I would say, I recommend Crossing the Rubicon, The Dreamers Hotel. It's really good. And as well as just giving you some highlights from the record, Tina and Satellites. Satellites is actually, I believe, The Dreamers Hotel and Satellites are possibly my two favorite songs on the record. Once you're done with this one, check out the acoustic version that came out a few weeks ago. I don't remember the name of the acoustic album, but it's available everywhere on Apple Music and Spotify. But yeah, the sixth studio album by Enter Shikari. They are really good, really unique. They don't sound like anything else, which is, it's one of those bands that you either like them or you hate them. So I don't know. Give it a try and see if you like what you hear.
Well, I'm always up for something new, so I'll check it out this weekend. I have a music pick too, which is Blue Weekend by Wolf Alice. And this came out just today, but I've had a chance over the course of the morning to listen to it a couple of times, and it's really fantastic. I mean, just to give you an idea, New Music Express this morning called this a stone-cold masterpiece. Now, Wolf Alice, this is their third studio album. The first album, one of the songs was nominated for a Grammy. The second album, there was a song that they won a Mercury Prize for. And this album, it's a little hard to describe it. It really runs a wide spectrum of types of music. There's everything from somewhat folksy, finger-picking guitar type of mellow songs to really hard driving songs. It's a very it really hangs together well though, which is kind of surprising given the range, but the sound is just amazing. And I'm gonna lodge a small complaint about Apple Music right now, because as we record this, I opened up Apple Music to tell you the songs that I really like, because I had liked some of them in Apple Music on a different Mac, and they're not showing up on this machine that I'm recording on. But I do remember which ones I like the best. I like Delicious Things, great song. Smile, which is also one of the louder songs on the album. And The Last Man on Earth is another really, really great track. So there's a lot here. It's the kind of album I think that grows on you listening to listening. I picked up on a lot more the second time through this, and I'm looking forward to kind of putting this one on repeat during WWDC, just to kind of, as I'm writing, absorb it a little more deeply. But it's definitely a great album and worth checking out. I've been anticipating this one for months now, because it got a release date forever ago, I think, and there were only a couple of tracks that were released early, but the whole thing's out now, so go check it out. All right, Federico, that's it for this week on MacStories Unwind. You can find the two of us over at MacStories.net. Federico is on Twitter and Instagram, where he's at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you next Friday, Federico.
Ciao, John.